Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, ladies. Today, we're going to continue the conversation around breast health. And I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Erin Glynn, but I want to continue that conversation because it's so important. And today, we covered tools, we covered prevention, we covered tips, we covered even general health tips that I think you're going to really enjoy. So stay tuned, and I'll bring in my guests in a minute. But before I do, I want to do a quick introduction to who I am. My name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for more than 20 years. I'm a four-time published menopause researcher and soon to be fifth, which is very exciting. And I'll share more of that with you on future episodes. I'm also the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that helps to empower you to take control of your health and symptoms with nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. And speaking about research, I am super passionate about our research that we're doing. So we now have 14 surveys on our website, which is really exciting. So if you haven't filled them out, please go and fill them out. I would be super grateful. Our two newest ones are our men's perspective on menopause. So that's for the male in your life. And then our other one is we just launched it, which is our headaches and migraine survey. So please take a moment. We put a link below to fill them out. I would be super grateful. Our signs and symptoms survey now has over 5,200 responses, which is incredible. Today I'm speaking with Kathryn Speer. She's a certified clinical thermographic technician and manager of the Thermography Clinic, New Brunswick. Based on her own personal experience with health issues as it related to her breasts and thyroid, she experienced firsthand the frustration of not knowing what was happening to her body and the inability to heal herself as a result of the information that was available to her at the time. Her personal journey led her on a passionate search for answers and a way to take back the power in her own healing. Now, here's Kathryn. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Kathryn.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm looking so forward to this conversation with you.
So am I. And so, just for, I guess, context for our listeners, you and I met back in February when I did a talk in New Brunswick, which, by the way, was like my first time ever on the East Coast, which is so crazy to
Wow.
me considering I'm in like my mid 50s and I'd never even been out east in Canada. So that was like a real treat. And I actually loved it. I loved it there. It was
Well,
amazing.
then you're going to have to come back in the summertime when it's much warmer.
I hear it's beautiful. I hear it's actually very beautiful in the summer. So yes, I have to come back. So we met, you were sitting at the same table as me and we kind of just instantly bonded. And when I found out that you were actually, you have a thermography clinic or practice or however you're gonna call it today, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing because I know Alex and we'll talk about all of that and kind of give the backstory. So why don't you start with that backstory? So introduce what thermography is and then how you came to it.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. I'm definitely someone who's very passionate about talking about it. So you may have to reel me in as we go. Um, so, thermography is what we call a physiological scan of the body, or my favorite part is the breast. And physiological in English terms means functional. So, how is the breast or body functioning? Because you have to have dysfunction before you have disease. So it's very much a tool that can be used for looking at what is happening in the body long before something happens. Hopefully, we see long before something happens. Now, I really want to share with people because a lot of people don't know this. And when I brought it to the East Coast 5 years ago, this is what was shocking for a lot of people is that thermography was actually designed at McGill University in 1956.
Oh, wow. My alma
So
mater.
it's that oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic.
I went to McGill. That's so funny.
Fantastic. Yeah, but thermography started in 1956. And, obviously it's evolved with, technology and how technology has evolved. I mean, the first thermography um, scan or camera was about the size of a half of a fridge, right?
Mm,
So, it was quite large, just like the old cell phones and the big bags back in the day.
right.
But the technology has certainly evolved, so has the medical software. So it's been wildly used in Europe for 35 plus years, almost 30 years, I think it is this year, in the US and larger centers of Canada. But it was certainly new to the East Coast when I brought it here 5 years ago. But it's been around a while. So, for those people who are, wondering if, how long has it been around? Has there been scientific data on this? There absolutely has. There's been 800 peer-reviewed studies done
Nice.
on thermography, which is incredible in and of itself because based on what I've been shared is that, 40 is the gold standard for peer-reviewed studies, and there's been
Mhm.
800 on thermography. And the
Amazing.
majority of that has been done on the breast piece. So there's
Nice.
a lot of validity there to it. And again, you're looking at what's happening in the breast from a functional perspective versus a structural perspective. And I'm going to refer today a lot more, Andrea, to the breast piece because that's
Okay.
been, something that I'm very passionate about. So when I'm talking about thermography, I will often refer back to the breast piece. So how did I'm going to explain a little bit more about how did I come across this? So I spent 22 plus years in corporate business. I was an executive director in the call center space. Um, so what happened to me is that I ended up not feeling well
Mm.
and had a breast health scare of my own. So, burning pain in the left breast, a lot of pain. Um, was told, went to the doctor, got the mammogram done, ultrasound. I also had blood work done, but I also was not feeling well leading up to this. And as women, we push a lot. And sometimes we just think, I'm stressed or I'm really tired. I'm going to take a vacation, I'll get better. But our bodies tell us subtle signs and signals all the time, but we don't listen because our to-do
Yeah.
list is so big, or we're multitasking because we've got kids and a job and soccer, hockey, whatever it is, right? We live in a society today that is just, it's go, go, go. And there's not a lot of time, that we take to take that step back to listen to what our
Yeah.
bodies are telling us. And I went through the exact same thing. So at the time that all of this kind of happened, I had just gotten remarried. My dad had passed away. We were trying to help my mom move. I was, leading the opening of two other call centers in two other different countries for my clients. There was just a lot going on. And I wasn't paying attention, but I knew I wasn't feeling, my energy was really low. I just did not feel well at all. So fast forward, have a thermography scan done because everything else is, saying that it's fine. But I knew it wasn't fine. I knew it wasn't fine. And
Mm.
so for me, understanding using thermography and understanding that I had hormonal influence happening in my breast tissue, lymphatic congestion, fibrocystic activity. There was a lot going on there. Now, the mammogram didn't pick up on that, right? The ultrasound doesn't pick up on that because that's structural testing. So
Right.
this is kind of where I want to get to, right? So you've got your structural testing, which is, mammogram, ultrasound, thermography, which is your physiological testing. So you see, when you can combine the two, then a woman
Mm.
has the opportunity to cover those two main key areas from a breast
Mm.
perspective, because now you're covering off the functional piece of it, but you're also covering off the structural piece of it. Okay. But in order to have structural, you have to have dysfunction.
So you're so basically from what I know, and I've been doing thermography for over 30 years, like for a really long time. And so what you're saying is that things show up first, and then which is why you want to look at thermography when you say, because you were using a lot of buzzwords like hormonal activity and all the different things that you were saying, and then eventually that shows up as dis-ease like down the road. So it shows up as, like you were said, like the activity that's going on, and then it ends up, or dysfunction, and then it ends up as disease, and which mammograms and ultrasounds can pick up very well. And one reason, or a reason, to get thermography is that you can pick things up way before it gets to that point. Is that what you're saying?
Well, hopefully we see you before that happens, right? But I
Right.
also want to make something clear as well. We don't see structure change.
Okay.
What we see is physiological change.
Right.
Okay. And then part of the thermography scan in itself is that there's two sets of images, right? And you'll be very familiar with this, the cold water challenge.
Mm.
Well, the cold water challenge in between your two images, and for your listeners that have maybe never had a thermography scan done, I'll just clarify. So when you come for the thermography scan, you're going to have your first set of images done after you've cooled down in the room for 15 minutes. The room is kept quite chilled because the body has to be able to acclimate. And then we pause and do a cold water challenge where you put your hands in 10-degree water for 60 seconds. And the reason why we do that is because it's stressing your vascular system. And in English language, that just means we're tricking your brain into thinking you're going into hypothermia. You're not. But you see, when the brain thinks that the body's in danger, it tries to protect it because the body doesn't want to die. So what it's doing is it's sending a signal to the extremities. The extremities are your hands, feet, and breast. They are on the outside of the body. They're not a vital organ and you can live without them. Okay. So the
Mm,
brain is sending that signal and it says, close down the blood vessels, redirect that blood to the organs because the body's trying to protect itself because it thinks it's in hypothermia stage. Okay.
interesting.
If there was an active tumor, as an example, those blood vessels will not close.
Mm,
They will stay open. And then we do the second set of images. And that's where oftentimes we'll see, not oftentimes, but if there is something more active
right.
happening,
If there's something
we
happening. Yeah.
see that as a hot spot.
Mm,
Okay, because the blood vessel hasn't closed. So, in addition to that, there's things like lymphatic congestion, hormonal activity, cystic activity, fibrocystic activity. Now, there are 4 different stages to fibrocystic breast. And fibrocystic breast, left untreated over time, can and do turn into breast cancer.
mm,
So, when I was growing up, I always had what they called lumpy breast, right? And they were painful, but I was always told, well, that's normal. But you see, that's not normal. It's not normal. It's the fact that it's not a disease. And so therefore, if the disease isn't there, how do you treat it? And again, I have friends that are, medical doctors as well, right? So, but we understand that in medical doctors are trained in disease management and emergency healthcare. If you're having a heart attack, you need to get to the hospital. You need a doctor, right?
yes. Yes.
If you break a bone, you need a doctor. So they're trained in disease management, emergency healthcare. And what we're saying is, let's flip the script here and let's try to be more proactive about our health because your body sends you subtle signs and signals that it needs support. So if you
Mm,
can add the thermography on top of your regular screening for breast health, you're covering off on all the bases. And
mm,
in addition to that, if you have dense breast tissue, right? It's well known that mammograms have a very difficult time seeing through
mm,
C and D dense breast tissue because it's not fatty tissue. And so it's very difficult for a mammogram to be able to do that. And they miss about 40%. The most recent numbers that were presented, they miss about 40% of breast cancers, right?
wow.
So no tool is 100%, right? Just like thermography, it's not 100% either. It's 90%, sensitivity, but no tool is perfect. But when you can combine the two, it's
Mm.
powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you can cover off both bases. So let's just go back for a second. You were explaining how thermography is done. So very important to
Yeah,
note that thermography, nothing is touching your breasts. Like there is
that's
zero
correct.
touching you. You are sitting in a room, like Kathryn was saying, and your hands are kind of by your side when you're cooling down for that 15 minutes. And then it's literally just a camera, a thermal imaging camera that's taking images of you, that's taking pictures. So nothing comes close to your body, nothing at all touches you. The only thing that is, I mean, it's not the most, like you were saying, like the cold plunge, like you have to put your hands, although it gets easier, I guess, over time, but you literally have to put your hands in ice cold water for 1 minute. It's just 60 seconds and then it comes out and then you do a second set of images. So just so you understand from a process standpoint, how it actually works.
Correct. And most people, to your point too, when you come for the first time, you're nervous because you've never experienced it before, right? So your emotions are a little heightened. And so when you put your hands in that cold water, it can be, kind of breathtaking, if you will. But again, it's 10-degree water for 60 seconds. And it's interesting because a lot of my clients, when they come back to get them done, they're like, oh my gosh, Kathryn, that
Oh, it
wasn't
doesn't even,
bad at
yeah, it
all.
doesn't even bother me like anymore. Like and believe me, if it did, I'd be like cringing before I went. Like I'd be like, oh no, I don't even think about it. Like honestly. So it's actually not like a big deal.
Right.
So I know that you say you focus on breast tissue. Actually, before I go to my next question, because I do want to
Yeah,
get to like what it could be good for other things as well. And I know we're focusing on
absolutely.
breast. So after you take the images, then what happens? Like what happens from there, and how do your clients get their results, and like what are the different results that they could get?
Yeah. So after I take the images get sent to Dr. Alexander Mastrovoy in Ontario, that's where you go to his
Who I've
clinic for
known
hearings.
forever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolute sweetheart. And so the scan results get sent to him. And so him and his team then have, you know, 2 to 3 weeks is usually the return time I get the reports back. When I get the reports back, then I review them as well too. And then what I do personally in my own clinic is that because everyone does things, a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But when I get the results back, I send the reports to the client, but I also do a recorded video review.
Oh,
And the
that's
reason
cool. That's very
reason
cool.
why I do that is because there's a lot of information in those reports. And when you're trying to absorb that, and most people absorb about 10% of the information that you're
Yeah.
giving them,
Yeah.
right?
It's hard to, yeah.
Especially when it comes to your health. So, because you may have a heightened sense of concern, there might be something that showed up. When I can explain it to you in English language, because the report comes in doctor language, when I can explain it to you in English and I can show you on the screen where Dr. Masavoy is talking about, or if there was a concern in an area, and I can explain that to you. It's recorded. You can download that recording and keep it for your records as well. That way there you can take notes, you can pause it, you can fast forward me, you can even delete me if you want to, but it's there for you for your records,
Right.
because there's a lot of information. And
Yeah.
especially, like I said, especially for people who, are doing a full body exam, for example, that is a lot of information. You will not retain that in 30 minutes of somebody walking you through that report. And then
Mhm.
from there, once we give the results as well too, there are some things that I can give them as options to consider. So, dry brushing, if there's some lymphatic congestion there, right? Dry brushing, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, me too.
A big fan of, lymphatic drainage, manual lymphatic drainage therapy. Um, Making sure that, we understand what else is maybe happening in the body, because I will tell you, just recently, some additional training that I've been taking, there's such a correlation between liver, gallbladder, kidney, which then impacts, your lymphatics and your hormonal slash fibrocystic activity in your breast tissue. Major correlation there. So, most of us are walking around with a fatty liver, and it's not necessarily related to alcohol consumption. It's the level of toxins that our liver is having to process through nowadays,
Yeah.
where we didn't have that before, but our bodies are constantly trying to do the detox. And when you understand the lymphatic piece and how important that is to a woman's breast health as well, um, that's a very key topic I would like to talk on before we're done though today, if
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
okay.
Well, let's talk about it right now because like what are
Okay.
some ways because perhaps, our listeners are going, okay, well that's great. Like so I get lymphatic. Actually, I just had a lymphatic massage this morning and I have to tell you,
Oh,
I was like I love it. It is so good. And it's a different type of massage, but it is so good and you feel so good after. And so I'm a big fan of lymphatic massages, but what are some other ways that you can help to relieve? So the dry skin brushing like you talked about the lymphatic massage, what are other ways that women can actually go and help to relieve some of that congestion.
yeah, I'll tell you, I just tried out last week in the clinic. And if you go to my Facebook page, Thermography Clinic NB, I did a video using a vibration plate because a lot of my clients have been asking
I've
me.
been hearing a lot about that. Yes, tell me about that.
Okay, this is cool. So last week, I was able to try a vibration plate because, of course, they keep asking me, and I've not done some, additional research on it. So I started to do some research, and then I'm like, okay, I really need to try one. So I did in the clinic. We videotaped my experience with it, but I took it even a step further. I did a before thermography scan of the
Oh, I
dental
love that.
cranial.
Your N of one research. I love it. That's great.
I'm such a geek, Andrea. Like I need to do that. I like to prove, and I'm always the why girl,
Oh,
right?
I'm
You
the
tell me
same.
something.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I'm the same. I get
So
it.
So I did the scan here and then the top part of my chest because again, these are the key areas of
Yeah.
lymphatic, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I did it before the vibration plate and then I took it immediately following the vibration plate and I stayed on it for 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm going to encourage you and your listeners to go out to my Facebook page and take a look at that because the
Yep.
difference was astounding.
So it's I'll put it below anyways, but it's Thermography Clinic NB. So N like Norman, B like Bob. So just New
That's
Brunswick.
correct.
So
Yep,
okay.
that's right.
Yep.
That's right. So it was really interesting. And the video that I did with my scans is I had the before and the after, but I actually did a video on it so I could show people because most people don't know what they're looking at when they
Yeah,
look at a
yeah, of course.
thermography scan.
Yeah.
So it was kind of high level, but there's four major areas where you can see the lymphatic change in just 15 minutes on that vibration plate. Okay.
That is so cool.
So It's really interesting. And when you're on the plate, it was interesting, you actually start to feel
Mm,
fluid in the body moving.
mm.
So it was very interesting. And my energy levels were really high for about 3 hours after that 15-minute vibration play. Because you have to think about it, your lymphatic system, and I won't go into all the details on lymphatics because I'm definitely not the expert on lymphatics, but it's definitely been an area that I've done a lot of reading on.
Yeah,
And I have a good friend of mine who's a lymphatic drainage specialist. So she helps me a lot to understand. But
awesome.
what's really important is that that lymphatic system, we have more lymph fluid in our body than we have blood.
Hmm.
Okay. But our heart, we have pumps throughout our body that pumps our blood. Lymphatic system
There's no pump.
relies solely on muscle engagement.
Yeah.
Okay. And without muscle engagement, it doesn't move. So here's something that's really interesting that I came across about 4 years ago. And I think it was maybe Dr. Eccles in the UK, because he's another doctor that does thermography that I've been learning from too over the years. And in any event, what's really interesting is that with the lymphatic system working, and it works with the liver and the kidney, because the kidneys, most people don't realize this, but the kidneys are a very big drainage pathway for all the toxins in our bodies as well. But what happens is that lymphatic system is partly responsible for that. So if you're not moving and you lead a very sedentary lifestyle, your lymphatic system is being congested.
Yeah.
But what's important to note about that is the lymphatic system supports the liver and helps the liver to remove toxins from the body or convert it into good lymph fluid. The key here with women's breast health is this, is that if that lymphatic system can't deal with those toxins, and again, we live in such a toxic environment, in our world, unfortunately, but there are things we can do to support ourselves. What happens is that lymphatic system will take all those toxins and it will dump it into a woman's breast tissue.
Mm.
And the reason for that, and I know it's shocking when you hear it, but the reason for that, again, is this.
Okay.
Fatty tissue, your breasts are fatty
Yeah.
tissue outside the body, not a vital organ. The
Right.
body is always going to try to protect itself at all cost.
Right.
So it gets sent to women's breast tissue, but then what do women do? Because we've been taught, God forbid that somebody should see your nipples. So you make sure that you have a bra on, or, a tight sports bra, underwire bra, tight sports bra. So what's happening with your breast is that your breasts aren't moving, no
Yeah, and
muscle engagement.
they're not draining, right? So that's why it's important to do massage even around your breasts and to I remember years ago I learned from a practitioner, she told me to like the sternum, like to
Yeah.
press in between. So for those of you who are listening on the podcast, I'm going to try and explain it, but if you're watching on YouTube, like literally it's pressing with your thumb right down on your sternum to like kind of like your stomach area, and that helps to move things too. But I mean, obviously, I would love to hear what your thoughts are. And then jumping on a trampoline would help too, right? With the
Yes.
lymphatics and
I'm a huge fan of a rebounder. I've got one in my
yes,
house.
so
I
good.
love the rebounder. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only challenges with the rebounder is it's hard for it's great if you have like knee problems and things like that. And, because it's very gentle. But if you have, and I'm going to caveat this, if anybody listening has any issues with prolapse, a rebounder is not going to be something that you want to do at this point in time. But you may want to consider a vibration plate,
So
because
it's
that will
super
also,
gentle. So
yeah,
it's
super
gentle.
gentle.
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do some research into it and look into it more. But I've been seeing it on all over social media lately. So I'm happy to hear that you actually had an experience with it because I've never tried it myself. So that's I like that. I like hearing that.
Ordered one right after I did the
Really?
experiment and I
Yeah.
seen what it did. Absolutely. I ordered it immediately because it was such an incredible experience. But I could actually feel, so when you stand on the vibration plate with your legs, out, you really feel it, especially in your legs and your hips and your stomach area. Okay. You really,
Mm.
but you do start to feel it because you kind of get that prickly, little feeling with the circulation. It's getting going. The
Mm.
movement is there. So you do feel it. But then when you bring your feet together into the middle of the vibration plate, it literally puts all of that vibration movement directly up through the sternum and down,
Mm.
because this is the major pathway of the lymphatic system, right? So it
Mm.
literally forces all of that movement directly here. And I felt a big release here from the nasal piece.
I'm definitely going to do more research on it, and I will see if I could find somebody to interview who actually knows a lot about it. That would be really cool too. So if you have a connection, let me know, and then I could ask someone to come on the podcast to talk about it. Because I think anything that, especially because it's gentle, right? And for people who, let's say, aren't mobile, or if they're in pain, because a lot of women in perimenopause and menopause have body aches and body pain. Like, so hopefully, they're, you're moving, and it's important to move, right? But if you aren't able to, that's a great option.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So yeah, so that's also very important, like I said, to the woman's breast tissue because we don't move our breast enough.
Mm. And then also, I years ago I interviewed this woman and she was saying, so breast massage, like we talked about a little bit, I kind of alluded to it, but like also like, she calls it like fluffing I forget what she called it, fluffing the breast or whatever it is, but like literally before you go into a shower, it was Dr. Sharon Stills, and she was talking about how just getting them moving, and maybe one way to do it is like you're doing your dry brushing and then maybe moving the girls before you get into the shower. Was that something you recommend?
It is. So what I always tell people too, the option for them to consider is doing dry brushing before they get into the shower. So do the dry brushing. I've done a video on my YouTube channel as well too,
Right,
to
right.
because I took a course back in COVID because it gave me the time to be able to take that course, which was fantastic. So I just did a quick little video for people to know how to do that. But again, I will caveat that video, and I do state it in the video, if you've had lymph nodes removed, please make sure that you search out somebody who can tell you how to do that properly, because when you have lymph nodes removed, your lymphatic system moves differently, and you
Mm,
cannot do the dry brushing on your breast just like somebody else that hasn't had the lymph nodes removed. Okay, so just
great to know.
for
Thank you,
that piece.
Kathryn. Yeah.
But yes, getting the lymphatic system moving before you get into the shower is really key, because then you're getting into the hot water and the movement of the water, and that keeps the movement going a lot more as well too. So it's really impactful. We've seen, Andrea, just to let you know, I've had some people that we've done some case studies on in the clinic. And that was, seeing that they've had so much hormonal influence happening in their breast tissue and some cystic activity. And the only thing that they did differently for 6 months was they added the dry brushing 3 times a week. Okay. So they were very consistent with doing it 3 times a week. And the difference in their scans after they returned was significant.
Wow. So can you explain for those who may not understand what hormonal activity means in the breast? Like what are you speaking about?
So inflammation,
Inflammation.
right?
Okay.
Inflammation into the breast, right? It's estrogen dominance, for example, is another one. But again, that's why it's so key and why it's connected back to the liver, because the liver processes hormones, right? So if your liver is congested in any way, shape, or form, or the bile ducts are congested, it's going to get recycled back in through the body, and you're going to start seeing it in various areas of the body, including your breast tissue,
So
because the liver is so key.
I didn't realize that, sorry to cut you off. I didn't realize that the body actually will dump that waste into the breasts. So that's really interesting and something I
Very
learned new today,
important.
like a new thing that I learned today. So that is one reason that, and we know that as we go into perimenopause and menopause, our liver already, like we're more prone to fatty liver. Our livers can change in size. Like there's so many things that are going on, right? So anything that we can do to support our liver in and of itself is really crucial as well. So actually, I have one of my chapters in my book, I talk a lot about liver health and also fatty liver. And it's just because it's something that unfortunately we're more prone to. So I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. And it's super important to make sure that we are paying attention to our liver, our kidneys, obviously our breast tissue and all of that. So that's crucial. How often should somebody get? So I tried to go once a year to get thermography. During COVID, I missed a couple of years, but then I went back this year and I'm like, I'm back on it. Like I'm back on it. I think I missed like a year or two. I was like, oh, no, no, no. I need to make sure that I'm on my breast health. So making sure that I'm getting all the tests done that I need to get done. So how often do you recommend your clients get it done? Now, obviously, it's going to depend on what's going on. So you can get into the nuances.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. So typically, Dr. Moscow, he's the one who's directing when he would like to see people back. Okay, so that recommendation doesn't come from me. But let's talk about what it looks like. So if you've come in and you've had a clean, clear thermography scan, he recommends yearly. And there's a reason for that, because your breast tissue can change, right, in a very short period of time. But typically, if you've come in and you've got a good clean breast scan, it's a 12-month follow-up, right? So just like you're going to take care of your breast health in other ways, maybe you're doing mammogram, ultrasound, or maybe you're one of those women that have to have an MRI. You want to make sure that you're adding thermography to that, just for what we explained earlier, the functional piece of it. But if you've got some things going on in your breast tissue that, Dr. Mostafai wants to keep an eye to, or he's concerned about, he's
Hmm.
going to recommend that you have, structural testing done, but he's also going to recommend that you come back. Maybe it's, 6 to 9 months. Maybe it's 4 to 6 months. It could even be, 2 to 4 months, depending on what is happening and, how impactful something may or may not be.
And just to be clear, thermography isn't a diagnosis. It literally
That
is.
is correct.
Yeah, just making very, we just want to make sure that it's not a diagnosis. You're not doctors. It's
Mhm.
literally just a tool that you can use in combination with whatever other, whether it's mammograms, ultrasounds, all, whatever it is that you're doing to get your breast exams, self-examination as well, that it's a tool. So Dr. Masawa might look at it and go, okay, we see something. Can you go speak to your doctor? Like and I know that, can you talk a little bit about that process as well? Like if, let's say he's concerned about something?
Yeah, so he'll put into the report that you get, he will put clinical correlation as advised, which means, follow up. He'll put in there, ultrasound imaging as advised. And again,
Mm,
you will
okay.
then, when we review that with you, we share with you that he would like for you to follow up, especially if you haven't had, I had a lady yesterday, for example, she had just had a mammogram done, which would have been, I think it was in March, right? So it was just fairly recent. We got our results back. And, he was concerned about an area.
Hmm.
And he had said, clinical correlation advised, but she just had
You just had
the
it.
mammogram. So we know that her structural test was fine. It came
Right.
back clean and clear, right? Nothing structurally happening going on. So we know that, okay, check the box. That part was done, right? What are some of the additional things that she can do? So, when we started, looking under the hood, if you will, we started having a conversation, there's definitely clear signs there that there may be some liver congestion,
Mm,
happening
okay.
that could be potentially causing this. And she's also been going through quite a lot of, stressful events in her life, which we know that, stress equals cortisol, cortisol, equals inflammation, right? It's like a cyclical event. So, there's options for her to be able to explore. She has a great naturopathic doctor. So I shared with her, make sure that you're following up with her, based on our conversation. And so she, that's what her path was going to be next, right? Is to follow up with her naturopathic doctor.
But that's great because it allows for her to change course and to change things before it actually ends up in something, which is why I like thermography so much. I started it when I was really young. I met Dr. Mostavoy many, many years ago through my doctor, through my gynecologist. And I remember starting, so I had like, all those years of history that we're able to do. So I think to me, I've always been a very big fan of thermography as a tool, and I like Alex a lot, Dr. Mossoy a lot. So, and I trust him too. So I think that's great. And like I said, as a tool, you in conjunction with other tools that you're using, like you said at the beginning, it kind of like it's like that full circle, right? Whatever it is you're choosing to get it done with,
Mhm.
which I think is important. So let's talk a little bit about the cost, and then also I know that he has clinics. So I know Dr. Mostavoy owns clinics in Canada, but also in the U.S. too, I believe. So because we have listeners from all over, and is it only in North America? Are there other places? Like, what if people are listening right now? How could they look into getting thermography as well?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to answer your questions, but can we just go back one more? There's one more tool I want
Yeah,
to talk
please.
about
Yes.
that's really important to women's breast health, and that is breast self exams.
Hmm.
And I'm going to share with you that most women that come into my clinic, when I ask them, do you do self breast exams? 99% of the time, it's always no.
Very
And the
important.
reason being, and this is no judgment. Okay. So to any
Yep.
listeners, please just know there is no judgment because I personally didn't do it either before, all of this happened. But it's funny because it's the same feedback. The feedback is, Kathryn, I have no idea what I'm feeling. It freaks me out because I don't know what I'm feeling. Right. So a lot of times that's exactly why they're not doing it because they don't know. I mean, you're feeling around, there's glands in there, there's mammary tissue, like there's all kinds of things, right, that are
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
And when you're not sure what you're touching, what you're feeling, how do you know? So it kind of, adds additional anxiety. But if I can share one thing with your listeners, if you go out to breast sorry, breast, my gosh, Dr. Veronica Desaulnier. It's called the, My Breast Friend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She's the breast cancer conqueror. Sorry, is her website. But what I want to talk about is the My Breast Friend. It is a silicone breast.
Mm.
And inside the breast is all the different types of cancerous lumps that can show up in your breast.
Okay.
So, and the training that goes along with it is incredible. Okay. So it's an at-home self tool that you can purchase. I think it's like $149. It is worth every penny because once I got it and did the training, then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop freaking myself out too. So I always share this, with my clientele because you can purchase this at home. It teaches you. This is the same tool that they
Hmm.
use. It's been approved by the Mammocare Society as well. It's the same tool that they use to train doctors on what they're feeling for.
Amazing. Wow.
Okay. It's really important because I think that the more women, that are doing self breast exams, right? And they get to learn their body a little bit better without the fear of what am I feeling? Because once you can feel what it truly feels like, it's like, when you have a baby and people say, well, how do you really know that you're in labor? Oh,
You
when
know.
it
Yeah,
happens.
you know.
There's no doubt. But it's kind of the same thing with the silicone breast is that once you feel those lumps and you feel what they could feel like,
Mm.
it really takes the guessing game out of what you are feeling. Okay. So I wanted to share that because that's really important. Breast self
Yeah,
exams,
thank
because
you.
most doctors aren't doing breast exams anymore,
Yep.
in their clinics. So again, it's about, women taking back their sovereign control of what's going on in, their bodies and their health. It's so important. Okay.
And
So
how
thank you
often
for
should
letting me share.
somebody do their breast self-exam?
At least monthly, and do it on the same time monthly as well too, right? So if you're still having your monthly periods, you want to make sure that you're doing that at least 2 weeks before your period starts. If you're like me and you're in perimenopause and you really never know when it's going to start, you want to go to like the first of the month. So I always do it on the first. It's kind of like a check mark in my brain. June 1st happened. I did my breast self exam. Okay.
Mm, okay.
So once you get used to doing it more and more often, you're going to understand the terrain of your breast and how your breasts feel.
And if you're
So
in menopause, just do it anytime. Like you're saying the same thing, like the first of the month, or just pick a time. Doesn't matter.
just pick a time, right? Pick a time. I always find the first of the month is easier for me because on the first, there's certain things that happen. There's certain bills that come out. There's certain things I
Yeah, it's a
do.
good thing to do. Like it's the same time every, the first of the month, you're doing your breast self-exam. I like that.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Cost, it's $295 plus tax. In my clinic, specifically, I work with naturopathic doctors, so we can also offer naturopathic coverage. Now, not all clinics do that, but of the clinics that do have naturopathic doctors as well too, they certainly can. Okay. Clinics, yes, Dr. Monsterboy has all kinds of clinics in various locations. And so what you can do is go to his website. It's just thermographyclinic.com. And on he's got a locations tab, and then it shows all the locations that he has. But he's got quite a lot of locations now,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially just recently this past year, he took over, I believe it was 10 clinics in the New Jersey area as well too, from another health practitioner that had the clinic. So, it's definitely been expanding over the years, and rightly so. He's put a lot of heart, soul, and education into thermography and helping women.
Yeah, he's been doing it a really long time. So
Yes.
let's talk about other areas of the body. I actually this year I had a dental one done as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So explain that and what are some other areas that people can get thermography for?
Yeah. So dental cranial thyroid and carotid artery. We don't put that in the title because it's a long title, but it does look at the carotid artery as well. And for those of you that are listening, carotid artery is here in the neck, and that is connected to potential stroke risk,
The side
which
of
is
the neck.
really,
So for those of you who
Mhm.
are listening, it's the sides of the neck,
Yes, sorry.
just
Yeah,
below your earlobes.
there you go. But dental cranial thyroid is important because thyroid is very important. Thyroid has a direct impact on breast health. Thyroid has a direct impact on every hormone in the body
Everything.
because
Yeah.
once that goes, or I don't want to say once it goes, it's if it's operating suboptimally, you're going to have the impacts on every other hormone in the body. It's like a domino effect
Mm.
when the thyroid, is not working appropriately.
Yeah, I interviewed
Um,
Danielle Métive. We'll put a link to it below. We did a deep
okay.
dive into thyroid. So if you want to
Oh,
learn more,
good.
those of you who are listening, yeah, definitely we can put a link to it below to make it easy for you to access.
Excellent. So what happens is that when you go to have blood work done for your thyroid, oftentimes you'll hear the words, it's within range. It's fine. Although you have all the symptoms
Or it's
of
normal.
potentially, right. Even though you can have all the symptoms of hypothyroid, hyperthyroid,
Yeah.
it's normal range, what have you. That range just means it's not in disease stage. That's all that it means. Okay. And remember, doctors can't treat you until you're in the disease stage when it comes to thyroid. Okay. So when you come for a dental cranial thyroid scan, we can see, is the thyroid cold?
Hmm.
If it's showing up as cold, then we know that your thyroid is not working optimally. Now, does that mean that it's in disease stage? We can't tell. So, therefore, your next step would be go get your blood work done from your doctor. Let's check and see, right? If it comes back that it's within normal range, okay, we know it's not in disease stage because it's only going to show up in the blood work when it's at disease stage.
Right.
But now, though, we can do other things, right, to help support that thyroid and getting it working,
Optimally.
optimally. Because that has a big impact on women's health. It really does. And in addition to that, you've got your lymphatics here as well, too, right? So your submandibular angle, which is along the jawline, the submandibular glands that are under the tongue, that's all connected to your immune system as well as your lymphatic system. Oftentimes I'll get people coming in and saying, Kathryn, I've got vertigo, I got tinnitus, the ringing in the ears, all those things.
All symptoms of
Typically,
menopause and perimenopause too.
exactly. But typically, what's interesting is that those women, when we get their scans back, they almost always have lymphatic
Congestion.
congestion.
Really, congestion around. Oh,
Mhm.
wow. Around the jaw,
Right?
under the ear. Wow.
Right behind, up and behind the ear, right? It's called retroauricular heat inflammation. Well, that's lymphatic congestion, which causes that to
Mm.
happen. When that happens here, you also see sinus congestion in various areas, right? In the sinal cavity area, because it's like your sink. If it gets plugged, nothing's getting down. So if
Yeah,
this is plugged
everything's going
here
to clog
behind the
that
ears,
back.
it's going to back up here, which is going to cause a whole lot of other issues. And then here, it can't drain down in here because here by the clavicle bone on either side, you have two main lymphatic areas, right? Pumps.
Wow. Hmm.
So it's a cascading effect, right? And again, when you have tinnitus or vertigo, that's not the root cause.
Hmm.
The root cause, and I'm all about root cause, but the root cause is lymphatic congestion
So even doing
potential.
something like I would think a gua sha even in that
Mhm.
area, just daily to kind of get everything moving, massage, your own massage. Like there's so many videos online now. You can even look at like your own massage or even like face yoga, which always looks at the shoulders and kind of the chest area to kind of get things moving. So could that be something that these, women, if you listen, I had vertigo and it is absolutely awful. So anything that can help the women who are listening, tinnitus, the ringing in your ears, any of that sinuses, like there are some great videos I would highly recommend looking online to help even around the like nose area to help to get things moving and to drain it. I
Yeah,
think would be really helpful.
it really is. And again, what I learned too is that lymphatic drainage is very soft pressure. It's not hard pressure.
You don't
Okay.
have
So
to
what I
bruise
was
yourself or hurt yourself in the process.
oh, or like taking the gusha and going hard down your
Oh,
neck. Do not
gentle.
do that.
Oh,
Very, very
gentle,
gentle.
gentle. Yeah.
Because your lymphatics is, from what I was trained, is that, and again, that's from my friend who's a lymphatic drainage specialist. It's kind of like your lymphatics sits right underneath the skin, and they're like little hair follicles. So think about seaweed, how seaweed ebbs and flows in the ocean, right? It's kind of like what those little hair follicles do. And so all of a sudden, when there's pressure, that seaweed becomes like a concrete pole
Mm,
and nothing is getting by it. Okay.
yeah, so
So
gentle.
again, very gentle, soft pressure.
I like
And
that.
that's what gets the lymphatics moving as well, too. So also with the dental cranial thyroid, just getting back to what your original question is, I'm so
Mm.
sorry. I could go squirrely and talk for hours on
No, no,
various
I love
topics, but
this. I love this.
um, around the dental, okay, so the dental area, Really important because even if you go to your dentist and you have, regular yearly checkups, what have you, there can be things that are starting to happen long before, and we'll pick them up in thermography long before sometimes they even show up on the dental x-ray. And dental health is so critically important to your overall health and your organs because every tooth sits on a meridian. And those meridians are connected by, ligaments and tendons that are then connected into the organs. There's a lot of information out there if you want to do a search on, your dental and organ relation. There's a lot of great information out there. And it's so important because people don't realize that there can be some inflammation growing. So as an example, root canals.
I was just going to say root canals. I remember reading years ago the connection between root canals and breast cancer.
Yes.
So I'm guessing you're going there, but yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a great book by Dr. Thomas Levy. He wrote, it's called The Toxic Tooth. That is a phenomenal book. A lot of great research in there. Now, Dr. Thomas Levy was a previous cardiologist and, very well-known cardiologist. And so he showed also where the root canals were linked to heart disease as well, too.
Okay.
So what's interesting, and again, I'm not a doctor, so just for everybody knows, right? I am not a doctor. I love researching the human body. I love researching all of this, great information because I'm all about empowerment and taking control of your health, because it is your body. You are the CEO of your body. So root canals, what happens with root canals is that they kill the nerve, right? So kill the nerve, but here's what's really interesting. You're putting a dead piece back in a living body. But what happens because that nerve is dead, you don't feel when the inflammation starts. And you will have inflammation in that hole in your mouth. Okay. You absolutely will because you're a living organism. It is a dead tooth in a living organism. And I can't remember, quote the doctor who said it, but he said, why would we ever think that putting something dead back in the body was a good thing? Now, again, I'm not a dentist, I'm not a doctor, but this is information sharing. Okay. So do your own research, but it makes perfect sense. You wouldn't put a dead kidney back in your body, right? You just wouldn't. But what happens, and we have pictures of thermography showing the inflammation coming from root canals going into the body, into the lymphatic system. That inflammation, toxic inflammation is going to go into the lymphatic system. That lymphatic system, it's going to go into different organs. And so there's been a lot of research done on that as well, too. It's a hot topic. I'm sure that it
Very
is.
hot topic, yeah.
There is, but
But
at the end of the day,
an important
it's
one to
very,
know. So like if you have, several root canals in your mouth and you're not feeling good, maybe it's something that's worth to explore. Maybe going to get thermography done, maybe perhaps answer some questions that you can then take back to your doctor and say,
right.
like, here, it's showing that there's inflammation going here, right? It's like you said before, it's empowering us to be able to go and then speak to healthcare professionals who are experts in that area, right?
That's correct. And it's not to say that every root canal is going to end up with inflammation traveling through your body.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
if you are struggling with health issues that nobody can seem to find answers to,
Yeah.
and you have root canals, please start your research there.
Yeah. It's great advice.
There was, a great documentary that was done as well on the toxic, I think it was called the root canal, actually, the documentary. You can still find it out there, but it was really interesting to be able to watch that and what this gentleman went through to finally figure out that it was his root canals were making him so sick.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so very interesting. So next up, again, we have the dental cranial thyroid carotid artery. We've already talked about the breast. We also offer upper body scans and lower body scans. So upper body scans, right? We're going to take a look at your spine, the neck, your stomach, your arms, your hands. And what are some of the things that people can see there? Well, we're going to see if there's, heat, inflammation showing up, over the liver, for example, in the spine. Are there areas there? Why would somebody, use this scan? I'll tell you that a lot of times osteopathic practitioners that I work with, chiropractors, massage therapists, they will send clients because they're working on an issue with somebody that they're just not gaining traction on, right? Because a lot of times your osteopaths, chiropractors, massage therapists, they're going to know kind of where the key areas are happening in the spine. Let's say it's, a dysfunction with the hip instead of alignment, things like that. They're so good at that. That's what they're trained on, right?
Yeah.
But if there's an area that they're just struggling, they can't seem to get that, moving, and it's a longer issue, if they're not being able to help support you within 3 treatments, they're going to send you over to me. We're going to do a scan to give them a bigger picture on what's happening because there's clearly something else going on, right? So that's one. The lower body, it's the same thing. We're going to do a complete scan of your spine, your lower close-up image of your lower back, and then of course your legs. And when I say the legs, we're talking about the fronts, backs, sides, insides, tops of your feet, and the bottoms of your feet. And again, oftentimes we're going to see things that are, dysfunctional. Is there muscular, dystrophy, dystrophy, sorry, muscular atrophy happening, right? Because that shows up as cold. We'll see things like, the blood is pooling in the veins, which is very important. So a lot of times I've had people say to me, oh, it's just varicose veins, Kathryn. My mother had them, my grandmother had them. It's not a big deal. Well, I'm going to tell you that that's a topic I could talk about too, but that is a big deal because that has a direct impact to your heart health. Because when that blood is pooling in your veins, it's stretching the veins, the blood is sitting there. Blood is rich in your, proteins and your oxygen and all of those things. So if that blood is sitting there, it's not getting down to the bottom parts of the legs, then back up to the heart because it's supposed to. It's not getting back up to the heart. Right. And so no oxygen is getting to the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments as well, too. Down to your toes. It needs to go down there and then back up to the heart again. So it can cause a lot of issues, but a lot of times women brush it off because we've been told, right? It's not a big deal. It's just varicose veins. Everyone's had it. So I'd like to share with you and your listeners an example of something that helps you to maybe see things a little bit differently. Just because you've heard, your mother, your grandmother, doesn't mean that it's accurate. And I'll give you an analogy.
You mean just
So a
because
little
they
girl,
have it, you mean? Just because it runs in the family, you mean? Is that what you're
well,
talking?
they say it runs in the family or it's not a big deal. My mom had
Oh,
it,
I see. Okay,
no
I see
big,
your point.
we kind of brush things off sometimes,
Okay.
right? But it's because it's been told to us and we don't actually think about it because we think, oh, well, it's just part of aging, which drives me crazy when people talk like that because it's not. Our bodies were not designed to be suffering and in pain and all the things. But just to give you a quick example, little analogy, a girl asks her mother, Mom, why are you cutting the top off the turkey before you put it in the oven? And the mother says,
Her mother
oh,
did
well,
it.
I don't know, dear. My mother did it.
Yeah.
So let's ask grandma, right? So you ask grandma, why are you cutting the top off the turkey before you put it in the oven? And then grandma looks at her and goes, well, because I didn't have an oven that was big enough to fit the turkey. Right? And you can go back, generations or what have you. But just because it was done a certain way, sometimes we don't ask the question on why. And when you're taking your own health back into your own hands, you need to question the why on everything. Because again, you're the CEO of your body, nobody else.
Yeah.
Doctors are not responsible for your health. They're not. I know people tend to think that, doctors are responsible for your health, but they're not. You're the one that's responsible for your health, right? They're just there to help support you when they're in disease stage. So, so yes, please just don't accept that you're in perimenopause, menopause, and, I'm going to suffer like my mother. I'm going to suffer like my grandmother because it's just part of life. It is not. That is your body's cry for additional support and or additional resources to help to support that. But we were not put here on this earth to live in pain and to suffer a long-standing transition to the spirit world from the time we hit 50 till the time that it happens. That is not part of the design plan, and I don't believe that. But it's different things that are happening to us, whether it's the chemicals, toxic pesticides in our foods, the Wi-Fi radiation, all the things that are coming at us all the time. And that's okay. We can ebb and flow, and there are things that we can do to help support ourselves
Yeah.
with everything that's being thrown at us.
Hmm. So is there anything else that you want to share before we end the interview?
Oh my goodness, I don't know if your listeners are ready for more. I'm
They are.
teasing.
Our listeners are the best. I mean, listen, we want to understand what our options are. We want to understand how we can empower ourselves, and then everyone makes their own decisions how they go from there,
Yep,
right? If they
absolutely.
go make do more research or not, and that's okay too. Like it's all about education and sharing, like you said before too. So that's why I do the podcast because for the more that we know, I love the fact that you were saying that just because something was done before or it's part of something that maybe a lineage or something, but it doesn't mean it has to be for us either. So, and I even last night I was at my daughter's basketball and this woman came up to me and she was having a hot flash and we started talking about menopause and she was just saying how her body is so different now and she just kind of was telling me and I was like okay, I was trying to help her because I'm like you don't have to live like this, like you don't have to be in so much pain and suffering the way you are. There's so many options these days, right? Like so from nutrition, lifestyle supplements, and so I talk about all the time, hormones if that's what you choose to do. Like there's so many options. So and we we want to feel better and it's in this stage of life is incredible. Like I want every single one of our listeners to thrive. So
Yes.
anyways, but yeah, so share whatever, whatever it
Okay.
is you want
So
to.
there's something else because as you can tell, I'm really passionate about helping people
I love that.
with information that's going to support them to feel better. Okay. And one of the things, because I'm always researching, and I was very blessed that this year I was introduced to Dr. Tony Rodriguez from Mexico. And I've got some information on my social media. But Dr. Tony Rodriguez has been supporting people in Mexico for almost 20 years now with herbal protocols, with adaptogens, and great success. And he's just recently launched here in Canada as well, too,
Hmm,
in
interesting.
March. And I was able to meet him and his team. And so the herbal protocols are pretty fantastic. And again, this is all you're always looking, right? Look, search and seek, and it will find you a lot of times because my main question, Andrea, that I was trying to solve for the last 5 years in my clinic is this: how do we help women to feel better, even 5%, 10%, even 15% better, so that they have enough energy and enough clarity of mind to want to go to the gym, to want to exercise, to want to eat healthier. Because this was something that I was seeing, which is a systemic issue in the clinic, is that women would sit in the stool and cry and say, Kathryn, I know I have to, eat better. I know I have to exercise, but I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I,
Number one symptom. It's the number one
right?
symptom across the board. Over 70% of women are
It
completely and
is.
totally exhausted in perimenopause. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the interesting thing happened because I'm always asking to be used, whether you believe in spirit or, universe or
I'm
creator, what
very,
have you.
very spiritual. Yep, I
Yeah,
am.
I am too. And, I'm always asking, please use me as a vessel.
Yeah.
Um, and so sometimes I have to be careful what I ask for because I actually get what I ask for. So, this past year or the year ago, I went through something myself where all of a sudden I started to understand to a greater degree what my clients were going through.
Mm,
And it really took me down a path that made me even more hungry to find other solutions to help
solutions.
women.
Yeah. Which is
Okay.
great. Yeah.
And then insert and how, Dr. Tony was introduced to me was definitely, divine intervention at its finest.
Love
And
that.
so the herbal protocols and understanding these herbal protocols has really started to shift and change the direction for people. Again, it's plant-based support, right? It's living organisms just like we are,
Yep.
helping the body to do what it needs to do. And Dr. Tony's also very open about the fact that there is no product that will ever heal you.
Mm.
They can support you, but
Yeah.
it's the body that heals the
Feels.
body when the body is given the right nutrients and the right
Yeah.
support.
And it's not only the physical body, it's the mental,
That's
emotional
correct.
body too.
That's
And that's an
correct.
important part.
Very, very important part. And I think you and I could talk for hours on that
Mhm.
piece as well
Oh
too.
yeah, there's a whole side to me that's all about, it's definitely like yeah, it's an area that I
Yeah.
absolutely love and that I work at regularly. So it's
Yeah, me too.
well, thank you for that. I think that's terrific. And we'll put Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Tony Rodriguez, he said we'll
Yeah.
put the information below, and so people can check that out too, because
Yeah.
anything that can help you feel better, that's our goal here today. So to me, that's incredible. Well, thank you so much, Kathryn. You are a
Thank
wealth
you.
of information. Thank you for sharing and for caring and for being here with us today.
And likewise, Andrea. And if you get down to New Brunswick, please reach out to me. I would love to take you around and show you some of the sites as well, too, dear.
I will get back there. I'll get back there, at least for the conference, hopefully next year. So I will get back there. All
Oh,
right.
well, that'd be fantastic. Because I'd love to introduce a lot of my clientele to you when you come back here to New Brunswick.
I love it. All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of
Take
your
care.
day.
Bye bye.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Kathryn today as much as I did. If you did, please share it, because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to leave a review for Menopause Reimagined for our podcast so that we could share this information with more people. Thank you for spending the last little bit with me. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but instead you chose to spend your time with me. And for that, I'm grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.